Welcome back, listening audience. It's your favorite show, the Guns and Mental Health Podcast. I'm joined today by Kevin Berry. Kevin, how are you doing?
I feel like I've got a partial brain functioning with all the busyness and opportunities we got going, but thankful to be busy.
Yeah, I'm glad you kind of did that so we can humble brag, but we won't do that now, but about all the things we got going on. Yeah, it is exciting times, right? A lot of stuff in the research community, the behavioral health community. We've been talking to senators out of Maine. I mean, like there's been a lot of stuff going on that I'm excited about. We had MCON, NASGW, had success there. I mean, I guess we can't complain. For as tough a year as it's been in the firearms industry, for us to still be around, we're very grateful for that. And also grateful for today's guest, Charles Anderson, coming to us from Michigan.
Yeah, just outside of Detroit. I'm stone's throw from 8 Mile right now.
There you go. We've dropped a lot of 8 Mile references on here, man. It's good to have you.
Keep it real. I don't know what to say.
Charles, we've met briefly probably like a year and a half, 2 years ago, during Chris Chang had introduced us. We just had a video call. But at NASGW, because I'm setting this up for the listeners to understand how we met, it was the night of the dinner at the NASGW, and I had missed my shout out that Kenyon Gleason, who's the president, had given me. He had said some beautiful things about Walk the Talk America, and I didn't realize I was supposed to be at the dinner. I didn't realize I was invited, so I missed that shout out, and I had a big giant sombrero. I was celebrating my birthday at a Mexican food restaurant, but I met you at the bar after at the hotel where the NASGW is located, the Gaylord. And man, I got along with you, and I didn't even know it was you, right? That it didn't click that you were the person that I talked to a while ago. But we were just kind of laughing at my situation, and obviously we got along really well. Kevin and I were sitting there talking to you, and man, you said some pretty powerful things. I always judge a person in a good way when they can talk about their struggles with mental health, because I feel like that, especially the way you were doing it, right? Like we were having drinks. It wasn't like a sob, woe's me story. It was almost just like a regular conversation of, yeah, I've been through something. This is how I cope. And you said one of the coolest things, and we don't have to dive into that yet. I want to dive into it later, but you said something that really blew my mind. You said, when I asked you, how do you get through your mental health struggles? And you said something that was really cool. Like I said, and I've said it to other people, like when I've posed that question to them, or that statement, right? That statement, when I pose the question of, how do you feel about this statement? There's a lot of people that don't get it at first, and then it clicks and then they get it. And you said, I tell myself you could kill yourself tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Right. I absolutely love it. At first, when you hear that, it almost seems dark, but then when you understand it, and like I said, we'll dive into that later. But it really had an effect on me that night. It was a very powerful thing. And then I was like, okay, we have to get this guy on the show. And I don't want to read your resume. I'd rather have you tell us how you got here today, coming up as the CEO, Charles Anderson, of Bleecker Street Publications.
Productions is the movie people. They get very mad.
Yeah, sorry.
Say that's me.
That too. No, just go with it. Are there any ladies out there?
First off, I love genuine people, right? And that first conversation we had 2 years ago, I remembered your name, and it was amazing being at Gun Prom, which is what that event was, and they call your name out, and I turned to my partner who was with me, and I'm like, that's the guy that I was talking to a little while ago, and he didn't come up. Okay. But if you're going to celebrate with Mexican food on your birthday, Texas is a great place to do that. So yes. I'm glad that we had a chance to talk, and I'm really, again, I don't want to get into it right now because, like you said, we're going to dive into it a little later. But this has always been something that's very important and something that I feel needs to be normalized. right? People need to be able to talk about it. People need to be able to just have a conversation about it. And I think the more of us that come out and say, yeah, I own guns. Yeah, I've got my own demons and I've got my own problems and I've figured out ways to go deal with that. Maybe it resonates. Like you said, what I said was pretty dark, right, for a lot of people, but when you're dealing with that, you're usually in a really dark place to begin with. So sometimes, just like dark humor can pull us out of a bad place, sometimes, dark positive thoughts, right, can pull us out of a bad place too. But as far as my history, it's a pretty wild roller coaster. Up in just outside of New York City, so grew up relatively poor in a very, very rich town, small town called Rye, where Barbara Bush is from. It had the Rockefeller Mansion. My grandmother was a maid at the Rockefellers, which is how we could afford to live in a town like that. So grew up really poor, really hungry around a whole lot of people with a lot of money and a lot of connections, and struggled with substance abuse and struggled with a lot of the problems that kids in the 90s did. It was right when the rave scene was blowing up in New York City, and Tunnel and Limelight, and electronic music was getting big, and I thought that was my future. And that mixed with, believe it or not, a lot of Grateful Dead following, and Fish and Mo and all the stuff that was coming out of Long Island and New York. And then after a bad run in that side of things, and living in my car and being homeless and just trying to figure out how things are going to go, I wound up running into an old friend from high school who had gotten a job at a brokerage firm. And he's like, you should come be a stockbroker. And I laughed in his face so hard. I was like, I got a high school degree. I have no college diploma. I'm a dirtbag, right? And I had, my hair was like this long at the time, right? And I was like, there's no brokerage firm in the world. He's like, no, this is great. They only hire dirtbags, so you'll be perfect. And so wound up going to work there when I was still 18 years old. I passed my Series 7 2 weeks after I turned 19 years old, youngest broker ever through the entire program. I thought it was normal. I thought what we were dealing with there was normal. I thought that's just what big business was, right? They wound up making a movie about where I was, which was The Wolf of Wall Street. Prior to that, it was Boiler Room, which was based on the testimony when everybody got busted for what was going on. We didn't know. I thought it was normal, but I went through this insane, high-paced, high-driven, huge expectations, constant pressure, substance abuse problems everywhere, and crashed out. Right. I was in my 20s with a penthouse apartment in White Plains and a Porsche and a whole lot of really bad habits. And when that brokerage firm got shut down, all of that ended. And I'm back to being a kid with a high school diploma, can't be a stockbroker anymore. Wound up doing a couple sales jobs for a few years, and then wound up meeting a venture capital company. The VC company thought that it was great that I had sales experience, that I had finance experience, and that I was a go-getter kind of guy. They also hired guys that they didn't really look at their resumes from what school did you go to, and what were your grades and all that kind of stuff. So I wound up doing VC for a long time, started working on the business development side and rolling companies together, starting in sales, moving to biz dev, overseeing marketing, and then we dealt with a lot of direct response products and a lot of restricted market products where we couldn't advertise in traditional media. So I learned how to advertise gray market product. And then the towers came down in New York, and I was in a really bad place. I had one of my friends that I went to high school with was on the plane out of Boston. I had friends in the building, and for those of us that were in New York at the time, I know, Mike, you got family out there, and you were out in Jersey. The market collapsed later for the rest of the country, but the market in New York, everybody walked around like a zombie for months. It was just, I can't believe this happened. I miss my friend, and it was everyone, right? When a personal close friend dies, you experience that, and the world doesn't see you experiencing that. It was wild to see in New York everyone experiencing that at the same exact time, and it was just too much. It was just too much for me. I couldn't handle it. I actually felt like a huge failure over the fact that I just couldn't handle it. And I bugged out to Michigan. I got offered a CTO position and took that position. Said that I was you can't take a New Yorker out of New York, right? And I'm going to be back in a couple of years. I'm going to take a short-term gig, and then shoot on back, and wound up falling in love with Michigan. And in the process, went out shooting with a friend, wound up buying my first gun, and the rest, they just started multiplying like rabbits, and started writing about it. Just posting on Facebook and whatnot, like, hey, I went to this class. Hey, I learned this today. Hey, I bought this holster. It was absolutely horrible. Don't ever buy this holster, right? And my ex-wife, or who was my wife at the time, was like, you're freaking everybody from New York out. Like, you got to stop talking about guns. You got to stop. They all think you turned into like some kind of right-wing crazy militia guy. Cause I was, I was from New York, right? I flip-flopped back and forth between DNR on a regular basis, depending on how much money I was making and and what was going on in my life and what my career was. But I've always been more centrist and libertarian to begin with. And she's like, you're freaking everybody out. I'm like, that's a problem, right? Like if me experiencing something is a problem for these people and it's driving them insane, like, one, they need to get that checked out, right? And two, like, I shouldn't be stifling who I am to make everybody around me more comfortable. So, but I also caved to peer pressure and wound up just building another social media profile where I invited all my friends that were cool with guns. And this was back when Facebook was still promoting gun content. I mean, we're talking the 2011, 2012 kind of time frame that I had gotten into the gun side of things. And it took off. Like, all of a sudden I had people asking me like, hey, what about this holster? What about this gun? And I'm like, man, I've been shooting a gun for like a year, right? Like why are you asking me anything, right? So I started going to more classes so I could get more informed and doing more things, and built this blog that was just about my journey and what was working for me and what wasn't, and what it's like when I'm not a cool guy. I wasn't in the sandbox. I didn't serve on the streets. I didn't do any of this stuff. I'm just a dude that had some money and enjoyed a hobby. And lo and behold, we wind up getting some gun companies that call us up and they're like, hey, can we send you some guns? And I'm like, no, you probably shouldn't, but you can. And they did. And then we started ranking, because of my experience on the marketing side and what we'd done with all the heavy duty venture capital work that I had done. We started ranking for those companies' names higher than they did on this little no-name blog that nobody heard of. And the phone calls started changing from, hey, can you review this, to what did you do? And can you do it for me? And I was still doing the VC work. And I was like, sure, I guess I could do some more stuff on the side, because every New Yorker needs like 2 to 3 jobs. You can't not hustle on the side. So started doing some work on the side kind of thing. And when the CEO of the venture capital company had developed Parkinson's to a point where it was becoming a real problem. And that's such a degenerative disease. Once you make a slip, you don't really get back from that slip. It's like the new normal. And he had enough money that he was like, here, you did great for me. Here's a huge severance package. Go figure out what you want to go do, but we're shutting this place down. Right. And that doesn't happen in VC a lot. You usually get bought out, but he didn't even want to deal with that. He had enough money. It wasn't a problem. So I wound up getting this huge lump sum of cash. And I was like, I'm going to go see if I can make something work out of this. And we opened up GAT Marketing. And in 2013, I think, was the official start of the corporation. We became the largest marketing agency in the firearms space. Wound up hitting the Inc. 500 2 times in a row, Financial Times 3 times for both North and South America, publicly or privately traded company. Grew huge client base, all names that you would know, some of which are sponsors of the podcast, I believe. And then in 2013, my fiance purchased Athlon Outdoors away from Arena Group, who was dealing with issues over losing the Sports Illustrated contract and a whole bunch of other things. And then she acquired my company to come on board as the CEO, bring my team over, move out of the agency space. and run the publications. And now it's funny, I get to get back to the publication side of things, which is where I accidentally started on this whole journey. And, now we're one of the largest publications in the firearm space, and really embracing digital and trying to do some good in the world. So
now that's awesome. I mean, that's a hell of a journey too. And it actually resonates with me because I spent some time living in New York City. So when you mentioned the tunnel and the limelight, the Sound Factory, like I spent some time in those places, and I know what the culture and the energy is like, during those rave days, things like that. And then, yeah, absolutely, man, going through 9/11, that was heartbreaking for a lot of us, because even if you lived in Connecticut or Jersey or Massachusetts, like everyone had somebody that was in the tower, the towers, like that, just a horrible time. It's crazy because I look at that time, not to derail from what we're talking about here, but that after that happened, like how united were we? Like we are so far away from that now as a society, and it's like I don't ever see us getting back to anything remotely close to that. So the beauty and the tragedy there was how everyone came together and worked together, especially East Coast guys, right? Like, just our culture, the way we were. Yeah, it's kind of sad, but I mean, we could do a podcast alone on your days as a trader, like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with the Boiler Room and Wolf of Wall Street, everybody loves watching those movies and they quote them. And I mean, that's just fascinating in itself. And then to get into the shooting sports, why that resonates with me is I'm sort of the same way. I mean, I had a little bit easier path because I got my job through nepotism, and that's what got me in the firearms industry. But, when I started Walk the Talk America, it's kind of like what you did. You had to take a chance, right? I sold my company. I had a little bit of money, and I was like, yeah, I want to make a go out of this, and where that was kind of, daunting is like, you look at the situation and you're like, I'm trying to create a job for myself that doesn't even exist. What I like, it's kind of, it freaks you out, you're like, yeah, I think I'm talented. I'm pretty good. I've been pretty good at everything I've done in life, but this is a totally new space. Like you said, when you're out ranking manufacturers and you're only 1 year or year and a half deep into it, and you're kind of like, I'm not really a gun guy, but people are coming to me for advice. I mean, that's wild.
It's wild. And if nothing else comes out of, vet your sources, people, right? Like because anybody can get on YouTube or Facebook and say they know what they're talking about. I've always been really clear though, right? Like I am who I am. And you and I talked about the fact I like to live out loud, right? And I think one of the mistakes a lot of people make, especially coming into this industry, is they think that they have something to prove, or that they have to justify what their existence is. And you don't. You've got to be yourself, right? I came into this space and I thought it was a lot of right-wing Christians, and there's certainly a huge percentage of that, and that I very much so downplayed what I had done as a stockbroker. I worked hard to get rid of my New York accent because it would immediately turn off people from Texas and Arkansas, and kind of became somebody else. And again, not to just create like a segue here, but that played into me pretending to be somebody, because I had gone from a place of authenticity to required to be able to make my career out of this, right? And I know you can understand that with leaving where you were and starting this, right? Like there's like an implication when you step into an environment or a group of people that we naturally, as people that have developed in society, is we try to mimic their behaviors. We try to fit in with those individuals a lot of the time. And when you do that, you can leave behind a little bit about who you are, and you start to stifle what's really about you. And then if the amount of successful people that I know that deal with imposter syndrome, which is really the core of where my struggle with mental health has come from, is I don't belong here. I don't deserve this. I'm not good enough for this kind of thing, right? That imposter syndrome is only fed more when you're trying to be something you're not, right? And I think that there's such a, I've got to be a badass, right? And you get these guys that wind up with stolen valor and everything else because they're trying to look cool. Like I was a cook in Iraq, not on the front line, but now that I'm in the gun space, I want to talk about how I was hardcore, right? And it's like, don't do that, man. Like I was never military, I was never law enforcement. I don't have anything to prove. I would write my articles with like, this was my third gun class, and and used to type like this, right? Like, this is my third gun class, and this is all of the knowledge that I have. Please bask in it, right? And it's like, just be who you are, man. And I think that goes in a lot of different ways. So,
100%. Kevin, do we got something in the chat?
Yeah, looks like G-Web's asking, let me pull it up on the screen. In 2025, are we ready for a monthly publication devoted to two-way activism, maintaining a scoreboard, current lawsuits, gun bills, with instruction for advocates focus on our heroes and a calendar? And then another follow-up, it seems till now activism barely gets a column or article here and there. Is that from lack of interest or lack of attention on this aspect of our two-way fight?
Ooh. Creating content on a regular basis, especially when you're dealing with legal lawsuits, is really difficult. The moving speed of these lawsuits is slightly slower than a tortoise, right? So there's a whole lot of flurry of activity. We filed, here's these amicus briefs, here's this other stuff going on, and then months will often go by and there's just nothing going on with it, right? So I think some of the quietness associated with this is the fact that anyone that's been involved in a lawsuit knows that it is huge periods of quietness, right? There's a lot of sweating, there's a lot of worrying, there's a lot of behind the scenes researching laws and how to counteract the claims that are made and the ridiculous statements that are made by attorneys because nobody cares about facts anymore. So one, that's difficult. Two, look, the facts are the facts. There's a lot of work that goes into covering that stuff, and there's very little interest in people actually knowing and understanding the facts. There are people out there, and obviously this is a well-worded question and a great question, and clearly the person asking has a deep-rooted interest in this whole side of things. But when you're looking at any kind of publication, it's designed to generate revenue, right? And that revenue is generated based on the amount of people that are coming to the website, how long they're staying on the website, how they're interacting with that website. And I'll tell you, legal updates, they skim and then they're out. So you've got a whole lot of work that goes into that for a very small percentage of users that are reading it. You know, it dovetails well with one of the things that we pushed very heavily for. The amount of individuals that go and take CPL classes and gun classes is not as high as we would like to see that. But it's much, much higher than the people that go take medical classes. And I've carried a gun for many, many years. I have thankfully never had to pull it, right? Never had to use it in a defensive situation. I've deployed my med kit 3 times in the last 10 years, right? And that's something that you're much more likely to need in life. If I write an article about med kits or training, it gets no traffic. Nobody wants to hear about like how to use a tourniquet properly, right? But you're more likely to need that seeing a car accident or something else than you're ever going to need it in a self-defense situation. And the same thing works with the politics. We need to follow it. I think when there is activity, between Facebook and blogs, it does get picked up. It's just that there's not enough consistent value to do that. There's also some really great lawyers out there in the gun space that are providing education, have newsletters. So if you do look around, that being said, the other side of it is I think the gun industry has a rhetoric problem, right? We love to get clickbait. We love to be like, those guys are bad. Check out this article because it's going to go make you mad, right? And I think, and I don't limit this just to gun companies, right? CNN, Fox, everybody does this, right? When you're in a publication space, inflaming your consumer base to hate click your article, right? It's a great way to make money. And one of the things that we have put a lot of effort into is removing the political content from Bleecker Street, because it's become such an issue where nobody talks about the facts. Like, this is what they're saying, and this is the law that it's based on, and this is why they're saying that. It's always just, these guys are bad and we're right. right? No matter which side you're on, that's the message. These guys are bad and we're right. And the publications tend to focus on that because it gets them traffic. If you do a well-informed, well-educated, non-politically biased article about what the facts are, nobody wants to read that. I wish they did. I really wish they did. So we're trying to get to a point where we are covering more of this stuff, right? I'm here to talk about something that's important to us as a company and encouraging mental health to the readers that we have. Our chairwoman of the board, the head of the company, is an ex prosecutor for the county, and then did defense work, and getting felonies expunged on people's history to be able to purchase guns again and get gun rights back to fathers that were improperly accused in divorce situations here in Michigan. So this is a big thing for us. We are working to cover that a little bit more. The best thing I can say is if that's what you believe in, do what Mike did, do what I did, get that together, put it out in a blog, because it'll get picked up. People will enjoy it. People will get out there. Doing the legwork is hard, and we need more people on the ground doing stuff. And we're working towards there, but we need the public to start caring a little bit more about what the facts really are.
Yeah, that I love what you said there. One of the things that I think about all the time, and it may, there's no right or wrong answer to this. I'm not expecting you to know, but like, why have we in the firearms industry failed? We're getting better, but why have we failed when it comes to leading into sort of the negative outcomes of firearms and figuring out our own solutions, right? Like Walk the Talk America 6-7 years ago, well, it's basically 7 years ago now. When I first started, it's like, if I opened my mouth about mental health, people on our side were like, stop blaming the gun. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and I always looked at it. I was just like, what was that? Do you think that was just, we're so conditioned to think that way? Or if we admit there's a problem, then we're cooked. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think that was?
I think it's a couple things, Mike. You're not unique from the aspect of you came into this industry through nepotism, right? The amount of family-owned businesses that are in this space is incredibly high, and big names like Mossberg, right? Like you're talking about, it's been in that family's tradition for 120 years, right? That's absolutely insane. Same family. You got Hornady, right? You've got Brownells, right? You've got these generational, created by grandpa, dad ran it. Now the kid, who's probably in his 50s in a lot of these cases, is running it now, right? And when you have that, what we have in the gun industry, and what I saw that was very unique when I came into the gun industry, was that it is very old school, right? Print still exists. It's struggling. This year's really been the kind of the final nail in the coffin, but it's 2025, and we're only seeing that nail in the coffin now, right? So there's this old mentality, right? And if you look back to the boomers, you look back pre-boomer, right? You didn't talk about mental health, period. Right? Never mind that it was related to what your job was. You just didn't talk about your problems. You didn't ever admit that there was a problem. You always created an air of success. You always created an air of certainty. And a lot of these family-run businesses, that's been passed on generationally to the new owners, right? In other industries, these guys all get bought out. They stop being family corporations. It winds up all being owned by like GE, Pepsi, and Disney by the time it's all said and done, right? So in the gun industry, that's not the case. So I think we have more generational burdens on us as CEOs and owners and managers of the industry, which kind of perpetuate a similar thinking all the way down, because there's not as much new blood coming in. And even if you're not the CEO, most of the marketing people I know, their dad was a marketing person, or their grandfather was a marketing person in the hunting space. And we also get so much hate and blame working on the gun industry. The first few years I told you the story about Facebook, right? Like it was a problem. I lost friends over talking about the fact that I enjoy guns. We become demonized and villainized as these easy, evil baby killers, right? So we don't want anything else, right? To draw in a new target or create an extra problem. And I think the problem with that is when people react from fear and people react based on other people's opinions, they're not leading the way and they're not causing change. And we need to lead the way and we need to cause change. And that means we're going to have to talk about this. We're going to have to acknowledge that there's a problem, right? We can't pretend school shootings don't happen, right? We have to address that from a gun industry side of things. We cannot pretend that suicide is not a real problem and that a gun is the most effective way to do that in a lot of cases, right? It's not that so many more people kill themselves with guns. It's just that like the percentage of people that use a gun to do it is so high that it really gets it done. There's a lot of people that are doing pills. There's a lot of people that are doing other things to try to get there. They're just not as final all the time, right? So we've got a problem. We've got an optics problem. And it not only an optics problem, we've got a responsibility, right? We cannot put a product that's dangerous on the market without warning people that it's dangerous, right? It's just the way that it is. And to pretend that people aren't going to use this in the wrong way, I think is disingenuous. And I think that the best thing that we can do is say, we believe in responsible gun ownership. Responsible gun ownership has been hijacked to become a negative connotation because it's often talked about from the people that are like, you need to be responsible. We need to come forth as responsible. And I think a lot of that includes, taking care of mental health and being willing to talk about it. From what I saw of the people that were talking to you at NHGW and the people that I talked to about you, because I tried to do a little research on my own, things are changing. The industry is changing. There's more younger faces in it. There's more people coming in from the outside. There's more people that are willing to say, I've got a problem and I'm willing to talk about it. And that's why when you said, do you want to come on here? I talked to some of the other people involved in the business and they're like, aren't you worried that people are going to know that you had mental health problems and that like you've struggled with suicide? Like, won't that make you weaker to like the people that were trying to, I said, I don't care. I don't care. Because if we don't put our necks out there and we don't do the right thing and say, look, everybody, maybe not everybody deals with this, but a lot of us deal with this, right? We're not doing ourselves any favors. So we need to be willing to do it. We need to put our necks out there.
No, and I agree with that. And I think the more people that can do it in the way that you do it, like I said, our bar conversation was a podcast like that. if we would have had the studio rolling, that's a great segue because I want to talk about the thing that you said that was so impactful to me, right? Like, just wait, you could kill yourself tomorrow. Like, how did you get there? Like, how did that come about? How did you figure that out? What was the context? Like, what's the history behind that?
So, I led off with the fact that, I struggled with substance abuse problems when I was younger, right? And I went through NA and I went through AA. And one of the way that it got me to actually be able to address the issue and get out of the cycle that I was in, was talking to a guy who had been in the program for, I don't know, 20, 25 years kind of thing. Right. And I was shocked. I was like, why are you still in the program? He's like, I have to be in the program. And he was going like 3 days a week. Right. And I'm like, you've been doing this 25 years, man. How is it not better? He's like, it doesn't get better, man. Like, he's like, you just learn how to cope with it. And he said, what I would do when I first started is I would come home and I would grab the bottle of Jack and I would put it on the table next to me and I would put an empty glass next to that bottle of Jack. And I would say, you can't have that right now, but it's right there. So like that anxiety would go away of like, I can never do this again. That becomes an insurmountable, impossible task, right? When you say, this is a thing that's driving me and really eating up my soul, and I just need to get through like right this minute. I'm just going to not do it right this second. And it's always going to be there. Like if I need to fall, I can fall. It's always going to be there. But I just need to not do it right this second. And then the next second, you just need to not do it that second, right? It's almost like a Buddhist living in the moment, but like from the opposite direction kind of situation of just trying to get through. And the first time, which was right after the brokerage industry issue with the Wolf of Wall Street, and I lost everything that I had and had to move out of my apartment, sell my car and everything else. I was like, I'm done, man. I'm done. It was so dark. It was so evil. I had climbed such an incredibly fast level of success. I was making more money than my dad made in a year in like a 1 month period of time, and all VIP at the club and backdoor entrances, and it was like a scene out of Goodfellas kind of thing, right? And it was incredible. And then all that was gone, like overnight. That was gone, right? And it was so dark, and the idea, the insurmountable task of trying to climb back out of this hole again, right? Having come from living in a car in the parking lot at Playland amusement park, right? To being as successful as I was, and now I'm right back down there again. Like, it created such a dark place. And my first thoughts of suicide and first attempts at suicide were with pills, right? Because I was in New York and I didn't have guns. It didn't stop me from wanting to commit suicide. It just made me use an alternate method than a gun, right? And the way I got through it was just sitting there and saying, I know that tomorrow could be different. I don't believe that it will be. I don't believe that I can climb out of this, but it could be better tomorrow. And if you just don't do it now, you get a second at bat, right? And tomorrow, maybe something changes and you'll feel good enough that you don't need to do something tomorrow. And you get a third at bat, right? And I could digest that tiny little, it wasn't even hope, right? It was just a tiny little release of this. It's so bad. I have to exit right now. I have to get out right now. I can't go on right this minute anymore. And this final decision is the best thing for me. You know, when you're in that place that you're not thinking right. So the best thing that I found I could do was give me a moment until I could think clear, and maybe just get a win. And then you get a win, right? And then you get another failure and you're right back in that boat again, right? And you're like, well, I was there, I got out of it, it came back. If I can just make it to tomorrow, maybe I'll get another base hit, or I'll get another, shot at getting this done. And it frankly was the only way that I could, because I'd have friends tell me like, dude, you've got so much and you've got all this going for you and life's great. And like, I wish I was you. When you're in that spot, you can't hear that. It doesn't matter who. It doesn't matter if it's a loved one. It doesn't matter if it's a friend. It doesn't matter if it's a parent. You just can't hear it. Like it feels disingenuous and hollow and separated almost from who you are. So I found the only way I could do it was to say, it's there. It's not going away. I just have to not do it right now. And like you said, it's kind of dark and fucked up. Pardon my French, but like.
Oh,
It got me through, right? And it's gotten me through for what, 20 years at this point.
yeah. So we have this campaign called Cause a Pause. We have these magnets where, it's like put a picture of someone or something you love, something that will create some time and space that will help you mentally create some time and space, right? Because it doesn't physically lock you out, but you managed to find that way to do it in your head. You know what I mean? Like, that was your cause of pause, is that phrase. And that's what I think is so cool. And it's crazy because when I would ask people about like, hey, how do you feel about this statement? So many people, like I said, they just go, that's not good. And they'd almost look at me like, right? Like I was asking them a trick question. You know what I mean? And I'm like, no, It's actually brilliant. And I'm like, let me explain to you why. And then they're like, oh, wow. Like when it clicks for people, it clicks, so that's what I think. I mean, Kevin, what are your thoughts? You're a marketing guy. I'm in the marketing sandwich right now. Let's go.
It's not a little slogan we could put on the Cause of Pause magnets, because it takes some storytelling and explanation for people to get it. I mean, we were having that conversation, the morning after with somebody at NASGW, and that's where it happened. They're like, and then when we walked it through it, they're like, oh, that's legit. So it's an extremely effective kind of a pass and way to cope with this, but it's not something we can slap on a banner ad or people will immediately understand. But once people, and that's why we're having this on a podcast, we can't just throw a little ad out on a website or a social media post and people are like, oh, that's legit. No, it has to be in a format like this.
Yeah, and I'm curious, Mike, and I'm not looking to have you out anybody or anything, but my belief on that is, if you don't come from having had the experience, and knowing what that dark place feels like, that probably sounds a lot worse, right? But when I've talked with other people that I know have struggled with this, they've always gotten it right away, because they were like, oh my God, like, yeah, like I know what that darkness is. I know that there's no positive, right? Like I love this idea of cause a pause in your life, right? For me, the loved ones and the things that were important to me, I felt like I was letting them down. So like that would actually create a bigger trigger for me. I'm one of those self-reliant guys. Which is why I take the medical classes, why I started carrying in the first place. I want to be self-reliant on doing what I need to do. And for me, just saying like that option's still there made a lot of difference. And I'm curious if to, I know there's a lot of people that support this. I know there's a lot of people that think, understand how important this is, even if they haven't struggled with it personally. And my thought is that anybody that hasn't struggled with this would be like incredibly offensive and in their face. Like, aren't you just giving them permission? Sometimes you need permission to be able to fail, right? Sometimes you need to be able to know that like the mistakes that I made aren't going to be forever, but it's okay that I made them right now. And this kind of just gives you that, like, I don't have to be a king forever. I just have to get through this one thing.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: when you were going through it at your worst, right? You kind of, I assume it's when you kind of lost everything, right? You lose the Porsche, you lose the apartment, right? Like at that moment, what? Go ahead.
Sorry. I was gonna say that was just the first time, right? Like
that's just the first, yeah.
That's just the first time. That was the first time that I got to that point, right? Was when that all happened. But you know, that story that I gave you, because I didn't want it to be an entire podcast, right? Of how I got to where I was like the ultra Cliff Notes version of it. There was a lot of failures in there. You know, I had multiple companies that went bankrupt over the years that were, wrapped into parts of that, and things that were done in between, and things that were done on the side, all of which led to failure, right? So like this is not a problem. I liken it right back to the alcoholism of the sponsor that I was working with, right? Like 25 years later, he's still got to go 3 days a week. Like it never cures itself. Like if you have the darkness sometimes, and I can't speak to everybody, and I'm not a mental health professional. I'm just a dude dealing with a problem, right? For me, it ebbs and flows, right? It's almost there almost all the time at some level, unless I'm flying high on some giant success. Even mediocrity and just doing okay, like, oh, we did 10% growth this year. I was on the ink twice, man. Like that's a failure for me, right? So like I fail all the time, and every time I fail, I question whether or not I belong here. I question whether or not I can ever support my family. I question whether or not I'm gambling too much on this venture or that venture, and it's all going to implode because I don't deserve any of this, because I should be the dirtbag in the parking lot, right? And I forget how far I've come and how much I've learned and how many people I've helped over the years when you're in that moment, So please, I didn't mean to get too far afield, but I want to make it really clear. This was not a one-time moment, and it's a lot of the time. I was dealing with it at NHGW. Like that's how, like literally the night before I talked to you. So
right. So it's one of those things where it's like, oh, it's always here. It's always with me somehow, some way. Yeah. And it shows up every once in a while, like this crazy, cousin.
X.
Crazy. Right. Kevin, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in. I know Dr. Christian Conti, who's Jake's mentor and gets brought up a lot on this show. We have a drinking game every time Jake mentions his name. But his perspective, kind of to your original question, Charles, of is it so dark of even acknowledging that as an option? Whoa, that's giving permission. But he walks through a lot of the most dangerous criminals, and just acknowledging that any potential option is realistic because it comes to your mind. It's not something to be like, no, that can't happen, that won't happen, anything. It's like, okay, yeah, that's a possibility. What other options do we have? And what would be the consequences of those actions? And acknowledging the legitimacy of, hey, that really is an option, but is it the best option, is kind of the perspective he'll take on some of those things.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's, again, to your guys' thing of cause a pause, all you're doing is tapping the brakes, right? So that you can get to a headspace that allows you to logically think about it and be like, what am I doing? Right? Because like when I come out of it, right? And it's like, man, that was rough, and I really don't want to be there ever again. But like today, the sun is shining and everything's okay. Because I don't know what everybody else deals with, but with me, it literally just comes over, right? It's almost like somebody threw sunglasses on me, and the world's darker, and my feelings are all like out there and exposed and easy to hurt, and insecurity is usually the trigger for me more than anything else if I'm unsure about something. And then I start questioning, who I am, and whether or not I deserve any of this. And one of the other things is, I'm doing really well, right? Like financially, I'm in a strong place. I left a bad marriage, and I'm in a great relationship with a woman that I love, who supports me. She's not a nag. She's incredible. Um, I've got a business that's incredibly successful, nationally recognized, not just in the gun industry, but Inc. magazine's not exactly the most gun-friendly place in the entire world, and they still ranked us on their listing, right? Because the numbers are the numbers, and there's nothing they can do about that. I have people come to me all the time like, man, I got a Ferrari, right? Like, man, I'd love to live your life. Like everything must be so easy for you. Just because somebody has stuff doesn't mean they're not struggling with demons. It doesn't mean that they're not questioning it all the time. Doesn't mean that they're not worried that it's going to disappear tomorrow. And it's okay. Like, I think it should be okay. Like, everybody should be able to get on this podcast and sit down with you and be like, yeah, here's my name, here's my face, here's my voice. This isn't something that could be taken out of context or a quote in a magazine somewhere. I'm owning it. I have this problem, and maybe somebody else can identify with that and be like, it's not about what I have. It's not about where I'm at. It's really just about a mental illness that I'm wired for, right? And maybe I can find a way to get through it. And I think if more of us do that, people won't be so afraid to talk about it. And if you aren't afraid to talk about it, it gives you more options. You can hear that weird thing that somehow makes it work, or you can have a friend that will be there to support you. You just don't think they will because you're in such a bad dark.
It seems like you've identified kind of the rabbit hole is the imposter syndrome and that generic theme. Is there any strategies and kind of preventative thoughts, actions, or things along the way that kind of holds up barriers against those demons that helps prevent you from reaching that kind of end result where you have to be like, all right, I can do it tomorrow? Or have you always kind of just struggled with it?
I've always struggled with it. I grew up, like I said, really poor in an incredibly rich community, right? We're not talking about like 2-car families. We're talking about 10-car families. We're talking about multi-million-dollar mansions on the Long Island Sound, right? We're talking about CEOs. The kids I went to school with, their dads were CEOs at Chase, CEOs at JP Morgan, CEOs at mega corporations, right? My best friend's father, who actually paid for the one semester of community college that I did, was a multi-billion-dollar bond trader for Travelers, right? So like, I grew up around this insane money as the poor kid who was only there because his grandmother was a maid, right? So like, I came from such a position of being so far behind the 8 ball and wanting all of this stuff and getting the same education that they did. And that's the one thing I'll give my parents. Like, they put me into a place where I got opportunities that most people don't get. I went to school with some of the best like teachers and educators that were available in the community, but I didn't score well, right? I didn't succeed because I had to work after school where everybody else, had 3 tutors that were taking care of it, right? I had to go to the hardware store. I had to go down to Playland and work the docks, right? Like, so I was always struggling from the very beginning. Life was always very hard. And then going into the brokerage industry, right? I thought I was like, man, I'm going to be the first one in my family to have an office job, right? Like, this is the idea that in the summer I could sit in an office with air conditioning and be like the only person in my entire family that wasn't like a laborer, right? And I was like, this is the pinnacle of success, right? And then making the money that I did. And then to find out that it was all fake, because we didn't know that. We thought we were legitimate, awesome, cool, best stockbrokers. If you watch the movie, it doesn't even begin to touch on what it was really like being there. We were so brainwashed that every other stockbroker was weak and pathetic. And we were the strongest, greatest, like special forces of stockbrokers that ever existed. And they built us up with this insane hype that helped us overcome all of the insecurities because they only hired, like I said, dirtbags, right? So like they knew everybody had imposter syndrome, and there is no greater sales team that was the true success of Jordan. There is no greater sales team in the entire world than a bunch of underdog kids with giant imposter syndromes that are told to prove it every single day. And the washout factor and the crackout factor was absolutely insane. Something like 1 in 1,000 people hired made it to become a stockbroker. The burnout ratio was absolutely insane. So I in some ways I created my own problems for myself because I kept putting myself into these like complete underdog, complete behind the 8 ball, didn't have the education, didn't have what everybody else was, but was competing at the same level as these people and higher in a lot of these cases, which just made me think that it was all my amazing sales tactics and I have everybody fooled and everybody tricked because really deep down inside, I'm just a poor little dirtbag kid who belongs to be living in a car in a parking lot. So have I ever been able to come over that? No. I see a therapist. I talk to a therapist on a regular basis to deal with that, and that's one of the ways that this has gotten a lot better for me over the years. And when I get to those moments, she's got a speed dial for me, and she always makes her time for me, and I appreciate her a ton. But like she's helping me try to find a way, right? And the problem is it's usually through positive affirmations and like, Charles, you just did this thing and like you received this award and everyone is singing your praises. Like, don't you feel proud about yourself? And the honest answer that I give is no, I don't, right? Because when you come from that, it's just like alcoholism or drug addiction or anything else. You're trying to fill a hole and a void inside of yourself that nothing will fill except for yourself. And I've been able to come to terms with some issues with my parents. And I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness and was kicked out of it. And it was like a whole thing, right? And when you lose major religion, when you come from being as poor as you were, that creates a tension issue between you and your parents, and there's a rejection of it as a child. All of these things just kind of build up into telling you're not good enough, right? So you build this hole that you try to stuff with drugs and women and alcohol and success and cars and everything else. And the more you put into it, it like grows. The more you put into it, it doesn't shrink up any. So the only thing that I found is I've come to terms with issues about growing up the way that I did. I've come to terms with issues of why I chase the things that I chase. And that's slowly, very slowly shrinking the hole. You know, my bouts of depression, my bouts of the darkness are getting further and further between as time is going on, which is great. But I think the most important thing is if you have imposter syndrome, it's coming from something, right? Like there's a thing you did, there's an experience you went through, there's a traumatic event that's happened, there's something that usually keeps telling you that you go back to that I'm not good enough for this. Addressing that is hard, and it's usually even more difficult to address it than what we all do of trying to ignore it. But if you can, that's the only thing that I've seen that's helped. And I will tell you, I'm not there. It's not fixed. It hasn't gone away. It's just further and further gaps and less times that I have to get to that point, right? Like I can now, when I see the darkness, I'm much better at reeling it back before it goes all the way down and getting to that point where I have to say, no, you could do it tomorrow. Instead, I'm saying, you know what you're doing. You know this path. You've been on this path before. You know where it's going to wind up. Why don't we just save ourselves 5 hours of drinking and crying, and let's just reel it back right now. And that, all you can ever hope for is things to get a little bit better, in my opinion. And every time they're a little bit better, you keep pushing for a little bit better, right? How do you eat an elephant? Same way you eat anything else, one bite at a time, man. And that you just gotta keep doing the little steps to get the big change in your life.
Yeah. So like you even admitting that like you were struggling the day before I met you at NASCW, I would have never known that when I met you the next day, right? Like
right.
You're coming out with jokes and you know what I mean? Like just being kind of jolly. That's definitely, something that I think we all have to keep in mind, right? Like that goes back to don't hesitate to tell your friend you love them or ask them how they're doing, because even if they seem like they're flying high,
Yeah.
there could be
No,
some demons there.
and that's again, if imposter syndrome is your trigger, that's the problem, right? Because nobody knows, right? Everybody thinks everything's fine and dandy, right? And if they don't know that I'm at that point, right? If they don't know that I'm that sad and that everything feels insurmountable and my heart's beating and I'm dealing with shortness of breath, it's not because I'm fat and I'm drinking. It's because I'm having a panic attack half the time I'm sitting in there, right? Like that's what's going on. If they don't know that, then of course they don't know that I'm actually a failure, right? And they just think that this facade that I've been able to put on is out there. That's the first part of conquering it, right? Like you have to recognize that facade needs to come down. You need to be honest about what you're doing. You need to be honest about who you are, and you need to be able to talk to at least somebody, right? And if you can do that, then I think that helps. That nobody knows that I'm secretly in this spot, right? And nobody knows what I'm really going through, and the spiral that creates for you.
Clover has a question from the chat. He's asking, are there any external factors that pull you back, calls from friends, emails, social media posts, etc., or is it always a conscious decision? And then I'm going to add a piece. Are there any of those that help you kind of maintain being in a better spot that you found that works as well?
Yeah. So that's a hard question to answer because the premise of the question itself, right? So like if I'm at a point where I need to say that to pull myself back, right? Nothing else is going to work for me, right? What I was just talking about a couple minutes ago of being able to start reeling it back in earlier, I think would be along the lines of what he's asking. And that's a newer development for me. And yeah, I've had situations where I've gotten a phone call from a friend that I haven't talked to in a long time, right? And I run this company, I run other companies, I have other business investments that are on the side. I'm a really hard person to get a hold of if you're doing business with me. If you're a friend of mine, I have a brand new baby, right? I've got a 15-month-old baby, right? That eats a massive amount of time, with my oldest being 21, right? So this isn't my first rodeo. Like I've got kids in high school, I've got kids in college, I've got a baby in diapers, right? So that eats up a whole ton of time. So I don't have time for the friends, and I think that's a problem for me, and that's something that I'm working on personally is making sure that I reach out, because the phones work both ways. But getting those phone calls sometimes makes a difference, right? And just shooting the shit with a friend that says, he's going through a hard time. I'll tell you, when a friend tells me, because I know what I've been through, when a friend tells me that they're going through a hard time, my heart just opens up, right? And I get so focused on trying to help them get through what they're through. And a lot of times at the end of that call, they're like, man, that is exactly what I needed to hear. Thank you so much, dude. I've got this. Because for a lot of people, that positive reinforcement is enough. For me, it never was. Doing something, again, I'm a self-reliant kind of guy. Doing something is where I get the value, as opposed to saying, this is fake, this is imposter syndrome. When I get off the phone with a friend and I know that I helped him today, that's not fake, that's real, right? And that usually gives me like a, look at you, man. See, you're not a dirtbag, and life can be good. You've affected somebody in a very positive way, which is part of why I wanted to be on this show today and talk to you guys, because it's important to go share this with other people. It's important to go get this out there, and it's important to help other people. And there's such a feeling of joy and goodness when I've spent the entire time telling my friend how great he is. Somehow at the end of it, I actually feel great about myself for the first time in a while. So that helps a lot. I enjoy dog and cat videos on Facebook. That is like
Me too.
my thing. Little known
Me
fact,
too.
I am an avid Pinterester. So I really enjoy like decor and cars, and I get away from the social media crap by going to Pinterest, because it's just cool pictures of stuff without any fighting about politics or, did you know that so and so is doing this thing to destroy America? Like, donate now. Like, I don't need that every third like happy message. Like the doom scrolling, I think our society has gotten really screwed up over. So like I found going to something like Pinterest, where I'm off of the social media, they consider it a social network, because it's not conversations. It's not rhetoric. It's more like, well, I mean, that blue doesn't exactly go with that green as well as you think it does. Like, that's the most hurtful comment that you're going to get on Pinterest, right? So I think finding things besides drugs and alcohol, finding things that are not detrimental to your overall mental health or feed into your emotions in a negative way are one of the ways that I help keep my head clear. Like every night I spend an hour on Pinterest before I go to sleep, because it lets me, I'm usually thinking about other stuff because there's not a lot of reading, it's just a lot of looking. I can work through the problems that I struggled with through the day while, doing that, and it clears my head, and then it lets me go into the next day a lot stronger. So I bet nobody saw Charles Anderson suggesting Pinterest as the cure for mental health, but here we are today.
Well, and I love the whole kitten and puppy videos or dog and cat videos, right? Because that's something that Kevin, when you kind of taught me about the algorithms, I sought out to change my algorithms to make it not so dark, and I started to click on and stay on puppy videos, and that's what I started to get fed. So if you go to my timeline, like on Instagram, it's a lot of like cute animals
Yeah,
that make me
nothing
feel
wrong with
good.
cute animals. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, but for me, I never underestimate the power of, and I think Clover kind of tapped on this. It's nice to have someone in the hole with you, right? Like, I remember one time someone said to me, when I was in a dark place, he was like, man, there's no one else I'd rather be in a foxhole with than you when it comes to certain situations. It made me feel good about myself, right? And I've had other time, little like movie moments, I call them, like where someone says something, just some really cool shit, and it totally flips the way you change. I remember when I was hemorrhaging money in my divorce, and like one of my friends who was really successful, like super laid back, kind of sounds like Matthew McConaughey when he talks, said, "It's only money. You'll make it back. Don't worry."
Yeah.
And that was a reframing for me, right? Because I was like, yeah, why am I freaking out so much about this? And this guy believes that I can make it back. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so it's tiny things like Kevin Hines, right? Like everyone, well, not everyone knows the Kevin Hines story, but he's the gentleman who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and lived. If you hear his story, it's incredible. But I remember him saying, I'm gonna go to the bridge today, and if one person asks me how my day is, I'm not gonna jump, or like ask me if I'm okay, I'm not gonna jump. Right? He was just looking for that, right? Like not looking for someone to say the dopest thing on the planet that's going to totally change the direction of my life. So having a good support system, or having some people that can listen to you and not wait to talk, you know what I mean, and figure out. It's almost like what button can I push in this person's brain to kind of change the course of their day or their mood? That's a big thing.
It is. I mean, everyone's different, and everybody's got their own demons and their own struggles, right? And there's no, I wish there was. There's no, you've been doing this longer than most, Mike, right? There's no universal solution to guns and mental health. There's no universal solution to mental health, right? Everybody's got a different contributing factor. But there's a couple things that run across the entire board, right? It's usually somebody missing connection. It's usually somebody, whether that connection's with an outside human being or whether that's a connection with themselves, right? For me, the outside stimuli helping somebody, but that's from a selfish standpoint. Like, I feel good about that. It's not the positive thing that they say of like, hey, thanks for helping me out. It's more the like, look at what you did. Everybody's going to have a different trigger, right? And knowing who your friends are, but more importantly, right, for, I would imagine the people listening to this podcast, you're either in the industry, right? I love the intro that you guys have, right? You're in the industry, or you said something curious. I can't remember exactly what the term was. The last little piece, or like gun curious or something like that. You need to figure out for yourself what that is. And then you need to build checks and guardrails to make sure that you're getting that. And you need to evaluate back on yourself where you stand right now. Is this a time that I need to go talk to a friend? Is this a time that I need to do meditation for myself? Is this a time that I need to go do some more work, even though I'm tired, because I know I get value out of doing that? Is this a time that I need to say, it doesn't matter how much work I have, I need to take some minutes for myself and go sit in the woods, right? You have to become your own, not just captain, but navigator and driver and the whole shebango, right? Like you're on a one-man boat a lot of the time, and you need to be monitoring all of those things for yourself. And then being smart enough and willing to go get whatever it is that you need, whether that's doing something for yourself or reaching out to a friend that you know or a family member that you know is going to give you the attaboy and this is what you need. And for me, that has helped with my partner, where she knows like when I'm looking for an attaboy and she's like, do you need that right now? And I'm like, yeah, I know it's stupid,
Yes,
but like,
yes.
I really need it right now.
Come on.
Please tell me I'm handsome, for Christ's sakes. Or like, I wash those dishes really well. Like, look at it gleam, like it doesn't have to be big. Sometimes I just need to know you love me, so.
I have to do the same thing, brother. Like my wife is Eastern European. She sounds like a vampire. Like literally, she's from Slovakia, and compliments like are not her
Hard
thing.
to come by. Yep.
Yeah, like they're just not. And there's sometimes like I just become this needy, like I need you to say it, say it, say it, say it. And she'll like call me on it. She's like, oh, now I have to feed your ego. I'm like, yes, you do.
Yep. Like mine's Macedonian, right? And she's like, man, you Irish, Scottish are so soft. And I'm like, nobody else says that except for Eastern Europeans, maybe. Like, okay. But like,
Yeah.
I need it. She's like, okay.
Yeah, like Clover Tech said, yes, spot on. You got to know yourself. You got to know when your triggers. Yeah. Thank you for doing that, Kevin. So I'm not, because my eyes are so bad. I'm like trying to read off a prompter. All right.
You start doing the readers down like this. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I have a question for you, though. I'm kind of curious because I feel like you're kind of like me, like we gamble in life, right? Like the things you started, where you came from, the highs, the lows. Is there ever a time like when you hit the low? And I'm going to preface this by telling a story from the other day. The other day I had my friend Mike over. He is a mechanic and he is doing really well in life. Like he really is. He's doing
Right.
well, but he doesn't own his shop. He's just like the lead mechanic at the shop he works at, but he's hitting these bonuses. He was talking about how great things are. And I kind of got a little jealous of him for a second in a good way, but because I was like, damn it, why didn't I just become a mechanic? Because it just seems like you're never going to be out of work and, you could do well. Like you can own your own house and you could, where I'm like, why do I have to be such a gambler and try to hit big or like do something that's passionate? Right. I was like, Mike kind of went through life because I was asking him, how did you get into this? Like what made you want to become a mechanic? And it was kind of like a cute story. And but it seems like Mike's life is like that. Right. Like ours is like this. Like, did you ever at your lowest point think, why didn't I just be a mechanic? Like, not that a mechanic can't have an exciting life, right? Like, it depends on your life choices. But like, why didn't I just do something that's stable? Why do I gamble? Why do I continue to do this?
When I was in high school, New York has a BOCES program, which is like a trade school that you can go to while you're in high school. And I did it because you could get a ton of credits, and it got me out of my rich kid school where I was having problems with the other kids and into a much more blue collar, down to earth kind of environment, which is what my family was, right? If not, lower down on the totem pole than that, right? And I went to become an electrician. My uncle Pete was a union electrician in New York City, and he made bank, right? And not bank like Ferraris or anything like that, but he had a nice house. The kids all had their own rooms. He helped take care of his parents when they were older and sick. When his parents passed away and his kids were starting their family, like he set them up with houses. Like he very steady, right? Like you start as an entry guy, and then you're a journeyman, and then you become a master, and then an overseer, and all that kind of stuff. And every year he'd made just a little bit more, and he was never worried about not making as much money. They went on strike from time to time, and that was hard on the family, right? And my greatest goal in life was if I can become an electrician. And I remember being in the parking lot at Playland, and I was like, man, I really should have become an electrician. Right? Like that would have, like I could be making $35 an hour right now, and like not great, but that passed quickly. And when the brokerage thing collapsed, I was like, I took my shot. Nobody gets multiple shots in life. This is it. I'm done. Right. And I dealt with the depression. And when I finally came out of the depression and I said, I'm going to dust myself back off and get back up, at no point was the answer, I'm going to take the safe route. Right. I am a gambler. I am an all in kind of guy. Right. I believe, not to get into religion and politics, is the easiest way to turn people off, right? My belief system was built in a way because of my parents being Jehovah's Witnesses and then me being excommunicated from that religion. God was taken away from me at that point, right? And it was not a thing where um, I had that governance. And it's kind of why I went off the rails, because my parents didn't teach me what was right versus wrong. They told me what God wanted me to do versus what God didn't want me to do. And Sam Kinison had an amazing skit back in the 80s that if I'm going to miss heaven, I'm not going to miss it by an inch. Right. And my answer was, well, if I've got nothing waiting for me, I'm going all in. And I genuinely believe that life should be about experiences. And because of that, I gravitate towards the big wins and the long shots and the getting it done right. Right. Like when I bet, I don't take the easy ones, right? I do these crazy parlays and I miss 95% of my parlays, but I pretty much break even every year. Like I'm never up and I'm never down. Like it's like $100 either way. And that's basically it, because I hit two or three like $100 pays $1,400 kind of things a year, and it
Right.
makes up for all the bad bets. Right. So I personally, and I think that's part of where some of my issues come from. So this is not by no means is a, hey, Charles has got it figured out, you should go do what he's doing kind of thing. I don't at all. Just like I said with the gun side of things, no one should listen to me. For me, I have to gamble. I have a mission to do something big in this world, right? And we're trying it with the publication, right? We have brought in, just like what you're trying to do with mental health, of bringing both sides of the aisle together. We've removed the typical political rhetoric, right? We've removed the, you need to go buy this because the Democrats are going to take your guns tomorrow, and more said like, hey, if you're looking for a gun because you're in a domestic violence situation, you need to protect yourself against a aggressive ex or something, right? Or you've got this problem or you've got that problem and you need home security, right? We're moving to a farm where coyotes are a huge problem. We're going to be, working with the kids on letting them know, look, like you need to be aware of this, and there's a 22 in the Polaris that you can use to take care of if they're charging you, right? You have to understand your situation and where you're at. And what it all comes down to, I think, really at the end of the day is we are trying to create an environment that allows anyone to be able to come into this community. And I think that inclusiveness and getting involved in all of these things and understanding each other is a huge step in being able to get out there and get that done. And if we all sit down and talk, like we did at the bar that night, I think we'll really find that no matter where we sit, where we are political, where we are religiously, where we are anywhere, we all have something, right? That is driving us. For me, it's a drive to succeed. That's probably very, very unhealthy, right? But like, it allows me to connect with people that are going through that again, and then maybe help them when they're having a problem. For other people, it's just being able to make sure there's food on the table tomorrow, right? I lived in that environment where we weren't sure if we were getting a meal tomorrow, right? So we all have our struggles. The most important thing, I think, is trying to meet everybody and figure out what it is that drives them and where they're at, and understand that yes, there's guys like you and me that need to go all in on every roll of the dice, and there's other people that want to play it safe, and neither one of those is wrong, right? As long as you're taking care of yourself in the process.
No, I love that. It makes sense. I really look forward to working with you in the future, man. I'm glad we cross paths like that. I'm so much more thankful that we cross paths like that than just continuing to have like a Zoom meeting. Like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
like I said, I found I was so cool when you're like, we talked and like we put it together. It's like, oh my God, yeah, we did talk. Yeah. Like, but I definitely, I want to be kind of cognizant of your time, you know. I appreciate you coming on. I guess I'm going to end it with, you know, you've given us so much on this interview, but uh, how do you tend to your mental health? And I get it. Like, you have your phrase that you use. I know you go to Pinterest, right? So it's kind of hard. I'm throwing the main question at you after you've already given us so much. But what are the things that keep you grounded?
Yeah. So I mean, look, the phrase is a parachute. It's not a way to deal with it, right? Like, you can't make that you can't live every day saying tomorrow I can commit suicide, right? Like that's only last ditch, you know, the whatever that crazy gas system that blows out fires but like sucks all the oxygen out of the room. Like, you're only hitting that if you're going to burn to death, right? Like that's a stopgap. I'll be honest, I struggle, man. And for me, the way that I deal with it is remembering that I struggle with it, being cognizant that I struggle with it, looking for the signs of when it starts to arise, and then trying to take moments through the day to give me a buffer, right? So you talk about cause the pause. I try to cause the pause before the pause is needed, right? And I found that that's one of the best things for me. I know that I have to step away sometimes. I know that I have to go harder sometimes. And it's understanding yourself. It's knowing who you are, being honest with yourself, which only helps if you're dealing with an imposter syndrome problem, only helps you on that aspect, because now you're being true to yourself. And that makes you feel less of an imposter. And by mitigating the imposter syndrome, by being cognizant of where I'm actually at, understanding how deep the waters are, understanding how far from shore I am at any given time, right? Those are the things that tell me, is this a Pinterest day, or is this a call a friend day, or is this a call the office in for an emergency meeting and we're going to start a brand new project today day? Like, what that is, and guiding that. And I think the only way you can achieve that is by being honest with yourself, taking time with yourself. And I'll encourage everybody, there's this stigma in the gun industry that if you talk to a therapist about your problems, they're going to red flag you. And I have no doubt that there are some concerns that, and that there's validity to a certain extent. My therapist is as left-leaning anti-gun as you could possibly be in this entire world, right? The first session, she was like, "You're not bringing a gun. Like, I know you carry, you're not carrying in here, right?" Like was like really, and I was like, "This isn't going to work out so well, right?" Um, but after talking to her and having her in my life, she understands that if I didn't have guns, I wouldn't be any less of a suicide risk. Right. I would just be using a different tool. And if you're going to die, does it really matter if it was pills or a knife or a gun? Right. Like, the end result is my soul's departed. Right. And that's what we're all trying to stop here. Right. Not gun deaths, not gun suicides, but people getting to a point where they feel they have to do that thing to end that pain. So please go talk to somebody, so that even if you don't want to talk about the guns, and even if you're not ready to talk about how far down the darkness you are, just talk about the things so that you can understand what's triggering you and who you are, so that you can take charge of that yourself in your own life, and hopefully know when it's a Pinterest moment, and know when it's a go out on the boat moment, and know when it's a, you know, call a friend moment.
Yeah, no, I love that. That makes a lot of sense. Got to know yourself. Kevin, anything else before we get out of here? Yeah, I want to take a moment to obviously thank you for coming on the show. I want to thank our sponsors. We didn't get a chance to really talk about this, Kevin, but we brought on a new sponsor for our Kids of Kings program, Aguila Ammunition. We want to thank. Special shout out to Aguila just for donating ammunition to the program so these kids can continue to shoot and achieve their goals, right? The program is based on taking kids and making them men and bringing them up through shooting sports. And obviously there is a tremendous cost when you get into the shooting sports, and Aguila is really stepping up and donating thousands of rounds of ammo to make this possible. So thank you. They're our latest sponsor. But Charles, where can people go check out all the publications, and where do you want to send people check out what you do?
So the biggest site everybody would know us for is athlonoutdoors.com. It's the home of Ballistic Mag, Tactical Life, Personal Defense World, Combat Handguns, Guns of the Old West, Skill Set Magazine, Tactical Knives. I'm sure I'm for Rotten Gun Reviews, where we'd love to see people give reviews on products that they've shot. We think that one of the things that we're making a big push on these days is not just relying on people like me that used to sit behind a computer and type about all their experience, even when it wasn't necessarily the best experience in the world. We want to hear from you. So we've created a website called Rotten Gun Reviews that's designed to let shooters who are dealing with these products and have the real one off the shelf, as opposed to maybe the one that got extra quality control checked before it got shipped out to us, tell us what they have to think about the product and think about the gun. And we just launched right after NASGW. We launched our first hunting property and fishing property. So there's Athlon Untamed, where you can go check out all that content. And we've got a lot more content in the overland side of things and the homesteading, prepper, with the big shift from COVID and people moving out of the cities and wanting to make their own sourdoughs and raise their own chickens. We've got some places for that in both a gun friendly environment without a gun pushing environment. So those are our big ones, and I appreciate you giving us a chance to talk about that.
Yeah, anytime. Like I said, you have an open invitation to come on the show, and we just appreciate you and thank you for being so open today. I think it really resonated. The chat kind of shows that. Yeah, like till next time, everyone. We wish you better mental wellness. Thank you.
Thank you.